We see car logos every day. Whatever sort of motor it is, there's usually something to tell us what it is. Some of them are beautiful, some of them are clever, but all have a story to tell. That's why today we're going to tell you about some of them. Be sure to stay tuned to the end to find out how one of the world's biggest car firms has stuck with one thing on its logo for more than a century. If this is your first time watching one of our videos, then please give us a big thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. Here are the stories behind the world's most famous car logos. Mercedes-Benz. Mercedes-Benz has probably got the longest history of any car company in the world. Carl Benz invented the world's first combustion engine in Germany in 1879 and developed the world's first car, the Benz patent motor wagon. But it was in 1925, after the Benz firm merged with Daimler, that the company's laurel wreath, the ancient Greek symbol of victory, got combined with Daimler's three-pointed star. The star has 3 points to symbolize where Daimler's engines could go: land, water, and air. As time went on, the laurel wreath was transformed into a plain silver circle. However, the star remains and helps make it one of the most iconic logos in all of motoring. Also, if you're wondering where the Mercedes name comes from, Daimler's designer was an Austrian called Emil Jelinek. When he designed a racing car in 1902, he named it after his daughter, Mercedes. But it's not just Mercedes Jelinek who proved to be an important woman in the history of the company. Carl Benz's wife, Bertha, was perhaps the first woman driver. To show just how good her husband's early car was, she used to drive the couple's teenage sons, Eugen and Richard, the 60-mile trip from Mannheim to Pforzheim to visit her mother. This trip helped show the public at large that the Benz car was both reliable and safe. Toyota. Toyota's logo is, like those of many Japanese firms, interesting, distinctive, and unusual. But have you ever wondered what the design actually means? Well, it was first introduced in 1989, 50 years after the company was first founded. The firm had been getting more and more successful outside of Japan, and it was decided that it was time to come up with something new. Before then, the company had just used its name in a blocky red font. The symbol that you see has many different parts. If you look closely, you'll see that there are 3 ovals. The ones which cross over each other represent the heart of the customer and the heart of the company. Toyota wanted something that showed the driver trusted the firm and that the firm trusted the driver in return. It did that by overlapping them. They also form something that kind of looks like a T for Toyota. It also bears a resemblance to a steering wheel, bringing everything back to the main point, the car itself. The blank space behind the logo also has a meaning. It stands for the Toyota concept of infinite values. Cadillac. If there was one car that summed up the American dream, it was the Cadillac. This was a car that was attractive, powerful, fun to drive, distinctive, and confident. Just the very name can bring forward thoughts of cruising down the freeway with the top rolled down and listening to classic 1950s rock and roll. But the origins of both the company's name and its logo come a long way from the United States of America. Antoine de la Motte Cadillac was a minor member of the French nobility who in 1701 founded a fort in North America. This fort was named Fort Pontchartrain de Detroit. The Pontchartrain was for the French minister, the Comte du Pontchartrain. The Detroit part of the name comes from the Detroit River, which it sat next to. As the years went on, the fort became a town, which then became a city. And in 1902, the Cadillac Car Company was founded right there in Detroit, Michigan. But what about the crest itself? It has had several different designs throughout the years, but it has always had the patterns that were found on Antoine de la Motte Cadillac's coat of arms. One thing that was on the Explorer's sigil that used to be on the cars but isn't anymore is a small group of ducks. Maserati. When people think of Italy, they think of the country's long history and its definitive sense of style. But it's not just on the catwalks of Milan that you find the Italian sense of fashion. No, you can also find it in some of its motor companies. One of the ones with the most iconic logos is Maserati. The company's story begins in the first half of the 20th century. The 4 Maserati brothers, Alfieri, Ettore, Ernesto, and Bindo, were all obsessed with engines, their power, and their potential. They made cars and engines in the beautiful and historic city of Bologna, in the center of the European country. But when the engineering quartet looked to come up with a logo, they knew one man who could help them out. They had another brother who wasn't so into motoring. Mario Maserati's love was art, and he was renowned throughout the city as a fine artist. So they asked Mario to come up with something. You see, the Maserati trident is inspired by a statue of Neptune, Roman god of the sea, that stands in the Piazza Maggiore in the center of the city. So people would have seen the 3-pronged fork and associated it immediately with Bologna. Now, though, people might well associate it with high-class, high-power cars. Buick. Buick is one of the oldest and best-known companies that exist under the umbrella of General Motors. While not quite as high-end as Cadillac, the Buick is a brand that oozes executive style and class. But the story of its logo is a somewhat unusual one. The firm is named after David Dunbar Buick, who was born in Scotland in 1854 and emigrated to Detroit with his family, aged just 2. He founded the car brand that took his name in 1903. However, his firm was bought out by GM in 1906, and he died penniless at the age of 74. But that isn't all. Buick never really had a logo until 1937, when a General Motors researcher discovered the Clan Buick coat of arms in a book on heraldry. This design was placed on the grille of the radiator that year. But it wasn't until the 1950s that the brand developed the logo that is still synonymous with it today. Someone took a stylized shield, triplicated it, and colored one red, one gray, and one blue to represent the 3 makes of Buick: the LeSabre, the Invicta, and the Electra. Although the Tri-Shield was briefly retired in favor of a hawk, nicknamed Happy, in the 1970s, it returned in the 1980s, where it still remains. Rolls-Royce. If you asked 100 people to name the most high-class car there is, we bet you that the #1 answer would be Rolls-Royce. These classic British motors really set the standard for luxury automobiles since they were first produced in 1905. One of the things that makes the roller distinctive is the ornament on top of the hood of the car. It's called the Spirit of Ecstasy. Its story is a fascinating one. In the early 20th century, there was a craze for people sticking mascots on top of their automobiles. However, some people at Rolls-Royce thought some of the mascots were not appropriate for a car as classy as theirs. However, one of the mascots company bigwigs liked was the Whisperer, a statue made by artist Charles Sykes for Lord Montagu. They liked it so much, they asked Mr. Sykes to create something that could fit on a Rolls-Royce, namely, speed with silence, absence of vibration, the mysterious harnessing of great energy, and a beautiful living organism of superb grace. So the Spirit of Ecstasy, a statuette of a woman, her head to the wind, wearing a long, flowing gown, was born. And it's become associated with the company and its cars, which combine power, beauty, and class ever since. Alfa Romeo. Car logos can run from the mundane, such as the company's name and nothing more, to the stylish and beautiful. But when it comes to a logo that's a bit weird, there's not really anything that can match that of the Alfa Romeo. It's something that is split into 2 halves and has been ever since the company was founded back in 1910. The first part, a red cross, that's the symbol of Milan, the Italian city where the firm was first founded. But it's the second half that's the most puzzling. It looks like a giant snake, which might well be wearing a crown, as if things weren't going to get strange enough. But the possibly crown-wearing snake looks very much like he is eating someone. A bit of an odd thing to put on a car, but there's a reason for this. You see, Milan was historically associated with the powerful Visconti family. In the Middle Ages, Ottone Visconti was a knight fighting in the Crusades. He battled against a foe who had the serpent, or possibly dragon, nobody's entirely sure, on his shield. And according to the company, the man isn't being eaten. Instead, he's actually being reborn. So if you see an Alfa Romeo, don't freak out. Tesla. In the world of cars, it usually pays to be innovative. When a new model or brand takes a risk, quite often that idea ends up being imitated throughout the industry. But one of the most brilliant ideas to have been picked up in recent years is that of the electric car. We all know that cars create pollution, which is bad for the environment and people's health. However, people still want to drive cars because quite often they're the only way to get somewhere. So when Tesla burst onto the scene with their electric plug-in and drive vehicles in 2003, it caused quite a stir. Here was a car which didn't use dangerous and expensive fossil fuels, but instead just made use of a rechargeable battery. While electric-powered vehicles had been developed before, they had never been as practical and powerful as Tesla's. And we just love the company's logo. It's very simple, but we think very clever. At first glance, it's just a letter T, but when you look closer, it has an extra layer. It stands on a shield, which symbolizes strength, durability, and safety. Considering the reputation electric cars had before Tesla, that's a good thing. And if you wondered where the name came from, it's named after the Serbian inventor Nikola Tesla, who did much to help develop our understanding of electricity. Vauxhall. Vauxhall is one of the biggest car manufacturers in the UK. Its vehicles have a well-deserved reputation for stability and affordability. Car models like the Astra, the Cavalier, and the Corsa have wormed their way into the British psyche. But it's not just that makes us like Vauxhall. We think they have a really cool logo too. Just look at it. It's an eagle holding a flag. Pretty cool, right? Well, actually it isn't an eagle. It's a griffin. If you don't know what a griffin is, it's a heraldic beast that's the top half of an eagle crossed with the bottom half of a lion. One of these was on the coat of arms of a Norman knight called Fawkes le Brant. In the early 13th century, King John of England granted him land south of the River Thames, near London. As time went on, its name got corrupted into Vauxhall. Back in the 1850s, Vauxhall Ironworks adopted the griffin as its logo, and it kept it when it started to make cars in 1903. Did you know that the Russian for railway station is Vauxhall? It's said the Tsar of Russia was paying a state visit to London when he stopped at Vauxhall Station. He wanted to know what the place was called, but misunderstood the answer. So when he returned to Russia, the name Vauxhall stuck. Ford. If there is one name which stands above all others in the history of the motor car, it's that of Henry Ford. It was him and his company that helped turn the automobile from a curious plaything for the elite into a vital part of everyday life. The innovation by the production line manufacturing that the firm used back in the early 20th century helped make cars affordable. Not only that, but Ford was one of the first companies to expand internationally too. The first Ford factory in the United Kingdom opened in 1911. And even today, Ford is one of the best-selling car manufacturers in Britain. It seems like everyone either drives or knows someone who drives a Ford, and part of the company's success is down to keeping things simple. The Model T Ford was able to be mass-produced, at least partly because it was only available in black. Even now, the company doesn't really do fancy cars. It does reliable, easy-to-drive, and affordable vehicles. This commitment to simplicity and accessibility is reflected in the company's logo, but contrary to what some people might think, it's not Henry Ford's handwriting. It's a design by calligrapher Childe Harold Willis. But since it's been with the company in one form or another since 1907, we think it's passed the test of time. When have you done something simple really well? Let us know in the comments. That's all for the stories behind the world's most famous car logos. If you enjoyed it, why not check out 15 hidden images in logos you never noticed? Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.